it is what it is, man.
Yeah, for sure.
You hear what we say, so.
That's usually how it works.
Yep, that's how podcast works.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Nerds You're Looking For podcast, a weekly podcast about nerd culture that discusses nerddom through various segments. My name's Tyler Hunt, alongside my co-host, as always, Pat Kuhn. How's it going, Pat?
I'm doing good. That was actually the best of the 5 tries we had for the intro. It's going to be a long episode.
To put things into context, whenever I edit this episode, I should just leave all of our fuck-ups at the beginning. And then that way it kind of makes sense why that intro probably sounded a little rushed.
Yeah, it was our like 5th or 6th try at it. Yeah. I had a couple of tries. Tyler had a couple of tries, and we decided to stick with that awful intro.
Yeah, I didn't do very well with that, so I apologize. But anyways, we're here, and now we're going, and we'll just put that behind us.
You can't. I bet you can't even tell that it's coming up on our 2-year anniversary by that awful intro.
We haven't fucked up like that on something like the intro or the outro in a few months. Or
it doesn't happen very often. A little bit behind the scenes, most of what you hear is not editing. Like, that's just what we like. I mean, I really don't cut too much out anymore, and I don't know about you, Tyler, but when I edit, I don't cut much out. So what you hear is usually what we are saying. So we don't screw stuff up very often. Well, relatively speaking. If you're listening and you are not a huge fan, I don't know why you would be listening, but
it could be argued that this entire podcast is a screw up.
Yeah, that we should just scrap it and start over. But yeah, that was a more elegant way of saying what I was trying to say. But yeah, it's just kind of, it is what it is, man.
Yeah, for sure.
You hear what we say, so
that's usually how it works.
Yep, that's how podcast works. Anyways, this episode is already off the rails, so we're just going to go ahead and jump right into it. We start off each episode by just checking in with each other. We call it what we're into. So, Tyler, what are you into this week? Last
Sunday, when I woke up after Halloween, kind of a horror movie hangover, I wanted to see something that wasn't horror since we had just finished up Shocktober, so I went to the theater and saw Steve Jobs.
Okay, cool.
And I'm glad I did, because it's already out of theaters in our hometown, or my hometown, or the city we live in.
Neck of the woods.
There we go. That would have been a better option. So our neck of the woods, it's already out of theaters, so I'm glad I saw it when I did. It wasn't bad. It wasn't fantastic.
Really?
It was pretty, I don't know, the writing was amazing.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, that's to be expected with Aaron Sorkin. I really, really appreciated that it wasn't a typical biopic.
Yeah, for sure.
I loved the way that they, and it's pretty well known about this movie, but the way that they did basically following Steve Jobs through 3 product launches, and through those 3 product launches, you saw a really good look into the cross-section of his life.
Yeah.
So I really appreciated that. I thought the performances were just okay, though.
Huh.
Michael Fassbender didn't blow me out of the water, and Seth Rogen was Seth Rogen still, just as the was, in my opinion. The whole time I watched it, I was just honestly kind of wondering, there were so many actors attached to this project, I was wondering how Leonardo DiCaprio would have done it, or how Christian Bale would have done it.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that Michael Fassbender did a bad job. It was just kind of, he was still Michael Fassbender to me. He didn't really become Steve Jobs like I think that maybe those 2 guys would have. Does that make sense?
Not to me, because I thought he was fantastic. I mean, I understand what you're saying. I just don't agree with what you're saying.
I think part of my experience with it, it was dampered by the Sony hack emails.
Sure.
So a lot of those emails concern this project, and you saw executives talking shit about Michael Fassbender, or just like referring to him as the guy with the big cock from Shame. And this project has been off the rails for a while. So I think that, I mean, obviously Aaron Sorkin did a fantastic job writing the screenplay. He always does. but I think that my experience was just dampened by that a little bit. It was by no means a bad movie.
Yeah.
Like, if we were giving it star ratings, I'd probably give it a 3.5. But I don't know. That's me. I can tell that we're on different sides of the spectrum here.
Yeah, I gave it a 4.5. I fucking love this movie. I thought it was fantastic. I do agree with one thing that you said, that it doesn't have the same pitfalls as most biopics. I loved how they broke it up.
Yeah.
Steve Jobs obviously lived a pretty monumental life, even though it was cut short. And so to try to make a biopic and fit all of those things into one movie would have been a monumental task. And so I liked how they just cut it up into, you just saw the 3 product launches. I thought that was a genius way of just showing you. And I mean, it worked for what they were trying to show you. I liked how they even sort of justified it at the end, because it was getting kind of, I was kind of sitting there thinking, why is this always happening right before a product launch? And Steve Jobs, Michael Fassbender, makes a joke at one point, like, why does everyone want to argue with me? I don't remember exactly verbatim what he says, but he kind of makes a off the cuff kind of joke about how people want to come up to him and like destroy his life or something like that right before he's about to announce a new product. So I thought that was kind of fun and kind of self-aware, just like a one-line little thing to kind of justify the concept of the movie. But I completely disagree with you with the Fassbender stuff. I thought he was fantastic. I think you have to give credit where credit's due. Sorkin's scripts are really dense, and he's on every single page. And to be on the entire movie when you're in every fucking scene would be pretty daunting. And I thought he did that with grace. I thought Seth Rogen actually played a more subtle character. I didn't think he was Seth Rogen. I thought he played a subtle character really well in this movie. So I pretty much disagree with everything that you just said.
Well, I just think that I liken Seth Rogen to Jonah Hill for obvious reasons. They're from the same group of people, and they're in a lot of the same movies together. And now Jonah Hill has gone, and he still does comedies, but he does movies like The Wolf of Wall Street or Moneyball, where he does become like a different type of character than what we're used to. And while Seth Rogen wasn't necessarily cracking jokes as was, I just didn't see him kind of transcend into that role.
Yeah, it's tough though, because he's not really in the movie all that much. But I really appreciated the scenes between him and Fassbender. I thought he raised his game a little bit, and I thought he worked really well. Those two worked really well off of each other.
Yeah, I mean, I think that with us disagreeing so much, it's coming across as I really didn't enjoy this movie, and I really did. I liked it a lot. It's just that doesn't sound like I liked it as much as you, and I definitely had a couple issues with it that you don't seem to have. So.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said about a movie that almost nothing happens. It's just a room where 2 people are talking, or 3 people, or however many people in the scene. And I was more intrigued and more into it than I am with some action movies that I've seen recently.
Like one we're going to talk about later in this podcast?
Maybe, not to spoil anything, but like I was more excited and more entranced than I was with Terminator or Fantastic Four. Like it. So I think there's a lot to be said that you could just have 2 people.
Really shitty movies.
But that's what I'm saying, like 2 action movies. Like I think there's a lot to be said, and I think you need to give credit when it's just 2 people talking. I'm more interested in that than I am in action movies. I just felt like, I feel like that you should, I don't know, not you in general. I'm just saying you as people in general should give more credit to movies like this that work more or work better when it's just 2 people talking versus there didn't need to be any explosions. There didn't need to really be a whole lot of action going on, but yet I was still really intrigued by the movie.
I mean, I agree with that because I would say 98% of my enjoyment of this movie came from Aaron Sorkin's screenplay.
Yeah, for sure.
So I 100% agree with that.
Yeah.
All right, what are you into, man?
I'm going to do 3 things real quick. A couple of them are just really kind of updates of stuff that I've already talked about. I mentioned in our Indie PopCon episode when we were live recording with Stevray Bro that I was into the X-Files, which is still the case. I've been kind of slowly making my way through that show. I just recently finished the 3rd season. I kind of took a hiatus from it for a while. I mentioned in that Indie PopCon episode that I will be reviewing every season of that show. I'm still doing that. I'm still working on that. I've actually finished the first couple of reviews. I'm going to actually start posting those this Friday. So when this comes out on Monday, it'll be Friday, obviously, when I'll post the first season. So I'm really looking forward to that. I mentioned in that episode that I was kind of disappointed with the show so far. I think at that point, only watched the first season, and it was a lot of the case of the week or the monster of the week, I think is how I described it in that episode. And it's still kind of like that, but I understanding more and more as I go through the later seasons why people love this show so much. It gets a lot better with the mythology, with the characters. I'm really starting to dig the characters and the side characters, like the assistant director Skinner plays a big role in the last half of the 3rd season. And so I'm really appreciating his arc.
Yeah.
And just, I like the lone gunman, the smoking man, like all those fan favorites. I'm starting to understand more why people like this show. And they're doing a much better job of weaving in that mythology. It's still case of the week for the most part, but they do have the overarching storylines, the mythology. I'm really starting to appreciate it.
How many seasons are there?
There are 9 seasons.
God
I'm
damn.
hoping to review all the 9 seasons leading up to the revival, plus the 2 movies. I don't know if I'll get to the movies or not. It really just depends if I can kind of stay ahead of the game with the reviews. Like I said, I'm already through a couple of the first 2 seasons reviewing, and then I'm already through the 3rd season viewing. So as long as I can stay a couple of weeks ahead of the game, I think I'll be all right and I'll get to the movies. But if not, I'll have to skip the movies. I've seen the one movie like a million times. The one with the bees. I don't remember which one that is, but there's one with like the bees are dying or so. I don't know what it is, but I've seen that movie like 1,000 times. It was ridiculous. It was just on TV a lot.
Yeah.
So,
I would love to completely watch this series before the revival comes on, because I would love to watch the revival. I just don't think I have it in me, man.
Oh, really? It's good. If you can get through that first season where it's just Monster of the Week.
See, that's the thing that's my problem with Gotham.
Oh, yeah,
Gotham
for sure.
It's obviously not Monster of the Week, but it's like Villain of the Week or Case of the Week, and it's just fucking exhausting and boring to me. I'd rather watch an overarching story, I think. And
if you can get through that first season, it's tough, though, because they are... Well, I mean, I'm watching it on Netflix, so it's like 45 minutes to 50-minute episodes, but there's like 20 plus every season. And so that's tough.
I don't think I could do it. I don't know. I'll probably watch the revival. I've seen a couple episodes of the X-Files, and I've seen I Want to Believe, the second movie, so I don't feel like I'd be lost. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, unless it dives too far into the mythos that I don't know because I haven't seen the whole series, but I don't know.
I don't know if this gets better, and I don't know if I mentioned it during my Indie PopCon episode discussion, but Scully kind of irritates me.
Yeah.
Because the reason she's assigned as Mulder's partner is that they wanted basically somebody to babysit him, and she doesn't believe in any of this stuff. Well, throughout the 1st and 2nd season, she sees some shit. They come across some shit. And it's still, we're finishing up in the 3rd season, and she still doesn't believe him. Like, he is able to kind of jump to those conclusions a lot quicker than she does, and I understand that. But at this point, what the fuck? Like, you've seen aliens.
Yeah, for sure.
You've been abducted. Well, supposedly abducted. Yourself, so it's like, what the fuck, man? Why is she always just a fucking Debbie Downer? She's always his wet blanket, and I don't get it. Like, she's seen some shit, and that dynamic is getting kind of old to me. But I mean, I still like the characters themselves, but the fact that she's always got to be the one that kind of reins him in is kind of disappointing, because I don't get why she doesn't believe some of this stuff by now.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Next thing, and this will be real brief just because I talked about it last week, is finally beat the campaign of Halo 5, and I'm starting the multiplayer, which I'm really digging it. There's a new mode called Warzone, which is so much fun, man. It's like basically Big Team Slayer, where you have a huge map and there's 2 different teams and you kind of have to capture these bases, but you also have an added dynamic where there are these like bosses, like some of them are Covenant, and it's really cool, and you get more points for beating them. So there's some AI that you have to beat, but you also are fighting the other team and you're trying to capture their bases. And there's also these rec stations where the better that you do in the game, the more rec points you get and the more cards you can buy, and then you can go to these rec stations and get better weapons. So basically you just start off with just your generic assault rifle and then the pistol, and you can go to these rec stations and buy certain weapons. So you can even buy vehicles too, awesome, if you're doing really well. And so it's just a lot of fun because it just adds so much more strategy to the game. I've actually pretty much been exclusively playing Warzone because it's so much fun.
Yeah, I just installed this the other day finally, and as soon as we're done recording, that's what I'm going to spend the rest of my day doing, is diving into Halo 5, so I'm looking forward to it quite a bit.
Yeah, it's so much fun, man. The campaign is, like I talked about before, is kind of disappointing just in the fact that it's really short. I liked the story, but it was just kind of really, really short. It only took me like 8 hours combined to beat it, which is for a big release like this is super disappointing. I think it took me, almost 20 to beat Arkham Knight. So that's, when I play a video game, that's what I want.
Yeah.
Is I want at least 20 hours. Now, of course, the multiplayer is going to give me a lot more than that, but just the campaign is kind of disappointing. But that being said, it's been a fun game. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm not disappointed at all.
All right, awesome.
All right, so the last thing that I want to talk about, and this is kind of my main, what I'm into, I just started watching Master of None.
Oh, shit, I was actually going to talk about this, and then we just never gave it back to me, and I kind of was going to let it go, so I'm glad you brought it up.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is the new Aziz Ansari Netflix show, and it's just fucking great, man. How far are you through it?
I just watched the first episode last night, and
really?
Plan B. I really liked it, so keep diving into it. How far are you?
I think we went through the 5th episode. There's only 10 episodes, so we're halfway through the season. It's really great, man. I love it. I like how it blends his stand-up and his book. Have you read his modern romance book?
Fuck no, I haven't read it.
I haven't read it either. I was just curious. I mean, I know what it's about, and it sounds really interesting, but I just don't read all that often.
The reason I had such a violent reaction to that is there's so many books that I want to read that aren't by Aziz Ansari, so that's why. But.
No, it sounds really interesting. It's basically just how dating has changed with texting and Twitter and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
So I just sounded really old when I was describing that texting and Twitter, and yeah, I sounded like an old man. But it kind of blends a lot of that. I mean, he plays it's not really autobiographical. I mean, he plays an Indian actor in New York City. And so there's a lot of the episodes which you haven't gotten to yet. A couple of the episodes deal with him like trying to get jobs and how he struggles because he basically has to play the Indian stereotype and everything that he goes for. And there's one episode that I really appreciated, kind of going back to the modern romance thing, is that it's just like he has this ticket to this like secret show that this band is performing, and he's trying to figure out which girl he wants to take to, and he texts all of them at a certain point, and it's him and his group of friends are trying to decipher some of these text messages and like the hidden meanings behind them and what he should text back, and it's fun to see how dating and stuff like that has changed. I'm married now, so I don't really have to deal with all that stuff, which I'm really thankful for because it sounds like a headache. But it's a lot of fun. His character is not the best person, but I feel like he does a really good job of kind of showing his softer side and his better side. So even though him and his friends aren't necessarily the best people, it's still at the end of the day they seem to do the right thing. So I appreciate that. So
for sure, yeah, I really liked I guess it would be the pilot or the first episode of it quite a bit. It was really funny, and I appreciate how low-key humor.
Yeah, it's kind of an awkward.
Yeah, and I like that a lot because a lot of the stuff Aziz has done has been out there. Like Tom Havelford, he's way out there. Like his stand-up can be out there sometimes. So I appreciate that he's kind of dialed it back in this show, and it's more subtle. And like you said, awkward. I like that quite a bit.
Yeah, I like it. I love that type of humor. Just awkward people in awkward situations and how they deal with it. He literally will. There's a couple instances where he'll be talking to. In one episode, he's talking to this girl and he's basically asking her out, and basically she says yes, and she gives him her number, and then he's like, okay. Well, I guess this is the end of this interaction. And he just walks away. Like his character is super awkward. And I love that type of humor. Yeah. Just like you can taste the awkwardness in the air.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's really good.
All right. So the next segment, moving right along, is just plainly called comics. Tyler and I read a lot of comics and we like to spotlight one or two a week. So Tyler, what are you reading this week?
So I'm going to talk about two. One of them is just going to be really quick. So a couple weeks ago, you finished The Mantle, and you talked about it, and I finally got around to reading the last issue the other day. So I just wanted to put my 2 cents in that I also loved it quite a bit. I know that you were disappointed with a few things in the final issue. And what I'm assuming is the final issue. I don't know. They
kind of leave it open-ended.
Yeah, so I don't know. It felt a little rushed, but I really appreciate how it kind of wraps up this first 5 issues of the story. I don't like how the plague was kind of that's what his name was, right? Yeah, so I don't like how his...
Very disappointing with that.
It was just kind of like, I don't want to spoil anything, but whenever the climax of that battle happens and you find out why the plague's been doing what he's been doing, it's really just a letdown, and it's kind of poor writing. So that was disappointing, but all in all, I really hope that they keep going with this series. I'd really like to keep reading it, and if they keep putting out new stuff, I'll keep picking it up for sure.
Yeah, you can listen to a couple episodes ago. I basically said the exact same thing. It felt rushed, and they'd been building so well, and then the final payoff was just kind of a letdown.
For sure. The other comic that I want to talk about really quick, I was excited to read, and I think it's 4 or 5 issues are out right now, and I was going to sit down and read them all last night, and that's Robin, Son of Batman.
Okay.
So it just follows Damian Wayne, obviously, and his adventures, I guess you could say. This comic is really fucking weird.
Oh, yeah?
It's super weird. So it picks up with Damian in some country in Asia, or, some far-off land. It doesn't really, I think, say where he is. But basically, he has a griffin.
What?
Yeah, so he rides a griffin.
Well, he is in Asia.
Yeah, but he has a large red...
I don't even know what that's supposed to mean.
Oh, wait, like, when was the last time you read a Batman comic and a giant red furry griffin showed up? So that
When was the last time?
Yes.
I've never done that.
Exactly. So this comic's very weird. It does not feel tied to the Batman universe at all, except for that, Talia pops up, or there's flashbacks of Damian at Wayne Manor, or Damian going through his year of training with Talia and Raish, or Raz, or however you prefer to pronounce it. So those flashbacks are really cool because it ties it all to the Batman universe, but the present day stuff is so far out there and so detached that I couldn't even finish all 4 issues. I read 2 issues and put it down and decided this comic wasn't for me, and I was really disappointed with that, because I love the character of Damian Wayne a lot. I think that there's a lot of potential there to grow that character and build that character, and this comic is not the comic to do so, unfortunately. So I do not recommend Robin, Son of Batman at all.
That sounds really fucking stupid.
Yeah, it was. It was really bad. It was hard to decipher what was going on, and the whole Griffin thing. Like, I can't explain enough how much that threw me off.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like, there is definitely supernatural stuff that happens in the Batman universe.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But nothing quite like Robin riding a griffin.
Yeah.
So
my head's kind of spinning right now. I'm trying to think of a way that you could justify it, but there's really none that I can think of.
They don't justify it. They don't say where the fucking Griffin came from. So I don't know if I missed something by not reading the Batman and Robin comic that Grant Morrison was writing on, or what, but...
Maybe they just kind of justify it by saying, well, the Lazarus pit is not not really based in reality, so why do I have to stay in reality?
Yeah,
But that's disappointing.
Yeah, it's super out there, so I would not recommend it. So that's what I got. What are you reading?
Well, I am reading, and I wasn't even aware that this was coming out, but it kind of works for what we're going to talk about with our main topic. There's a James Bond comic book that just got released. Dynamite just released it, and so I was kind of browsing Comixology, and I just decided that it would kind of fit with our James Bond episodes, and it sounded really interesting, so I picked it up. And I would say that I kind of have mixed feelings about this comic book, because I liked how it wasn't like the modern movies, the Daniel Craig James Bond movies. It kind of reminded me a lot of the older James Bond movies, which I haven't really watched a whole lot of them. Basically, it is about 008 has died, has been killed, and so James Bond is sent to kind of revenge his death. And then he has to pick up the slack until they get a new 008. And the opening sequence of this comic book, kind of the cold open, is really fantastic. It's there's almost no dialogue in it, and it's just a flat out action scene.
That's cool.
And it's really, really cool. It reminded me a lot of the Daniel Craig movies, where it just kind of throws you right into it and just kind of has you figure out all of the logistical stuff later. And so I really appreciated that. But after the opening sequence, it's very exposition heavy, which, I mean, it makes sense because it's number one and they kind of have to let you know what's going on and everything. And it's really disappointing because I was really digging how it was almost no dialogue. It was just all action. I love when artists can tell you the story in comic books better than just a bunch of word bubbles. But it was kind of a tale of two different comics. Like, the opening sequence was really great, and then once you get into the actual case itself, it was just a lot of people talking, and that was kind of disappointing.
Did they base the art on any of the particular bonds, or was it just kind of like a generic bond?
It was just kind of a generic bond.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so it's definitely, I guess it's based more in the novels than the movies.
Oh, yeah.
So that was kind of interesting, and I barely watched any of the movies. I wouldn't say I'm necessarily crazy about going back and reading any of the books. I mean, I like the character, but I wouldn't say that I'm a huge Bond fanboy.
Oh, I'm 100% with you. We'll probably get into it more in the Spectre review, but I've only seen the Daniel Craig Bonds.
Oh, really?
And I own the Bond set. Like, my wife bought it for me a couple Christmases ago, and I just never. There's not a lot of interest for me there. I hear such mixed things about some of them are hit and miss, and I don't know. I like to troll my wife though, so whenever we got out of Spectre, she's likes old school Bond, and she's talking about how Daniel Craig's not that great, and I love trolling her, and so I just talk about how great the Daniel Craig movies are, and how Daniel Craig's the best Bond of all time, and Sean Connery's overrated, and I thought her head was going to explode. So
it was on Netflix for a while.
Was it?
The whole all the Bonds were on Netflix for a while, and so I started to do a thing where I would watch one a week, but then it went away so quickly. I only got through the first like 2 or 3, and then it was already off Netflix. So I was kind of disappointed with that, and I don't know if it would be worth the money for me to get all the Bonds, because I would eventually like to watch all of them, but I don't know if I would necessarily love them like some people love them. But I do like most of the Daniel Craig stuff.
Yeah,
but,
for sure.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily call myself a fanboy of the franchise.
I just, like you said, I don't know if I could go back and watch them having been adjusted. Like, I think Pierce Brosnan's a bit of a twat, so I don't really want to go back and watch his stuff. I heard Roger Moore is not great, and then, so I mean, maybe I'll go back and watch the Sean Connery stuff, but all these people that say they love Bonds are like, well, this one sucks and this Bond sucks, but he's really good, but this one movie of his sucks. And it's like, do I really want to go back and watch 24 Bond movies? I mean, I guess that includes Daniel Craig's, but watch 24 movies that are hit or miss.
Yeah.
Like, it seems like a lot of work for just a little bit of pleasure. So,
yeah.
I don't know. Which would be the name of my biography.
If you didn't make the joke, I was going to...
I know, I just thought I'd beat you to it.
All right, but I mean,
cool.
I'm curious to see where it's going, and I may or may not stick with it. I think, like I said, it's kind of the tale of two different books. I really enjoyed the opening sequence, but the rest of the book was kind of let down.
Yeah, for sure. I probably will not be picking it up then.
All right. So our next segment is just plainly called a Nerd News. Tyler compiles all the nerd news for the last week. It turns out it's going to be actually the last couple of weeks because we skipped it last week. But so what do you got this week, Tyler?
I mean, it still kind of sucks. So, and it is what it is. So the first one's actually kind of cool. So the rumor is that the Batman standalone movie that will eventually be coming out, that Grant Morrison is helping write, or wait, no, not Grant Morrison. What's his dick? The guy that runs DC, Jeff Johns. Oh,
I thought you meant, okay, never mind.
He runs the comic side of DC.
Yeah.
But anyways, he's going to help write it, and Ben Affleck, like I said, may or may not direct it, and it's supposedly going to be based on the Red Hood / Jason Todd arc.
Yeah.
From the comics, and that DC is kind of wanting to make the Red Hood like their Winter Soldier type figure, where he could go off and do, I don't know, whatever the fuck the Winter Soldier does and whatever the fuck the Red Hood does. But I really like that storyline. I
For sure.
really like how they kind of brought Jason Todd back after they killed him in the 80s and kind of reintroduced him as an anti-hero, and the relationship with Batman is definitely skewed, and it's kind of been at the forefront of things recently with like the Batman games and, you know, some stuff in the comics. So I'd be really excited to see that on the big screen.
Yeah, for sure. I just don't know if Warner Brothers is the studio to do it. I think they're picking the right Batman stories to do. I just don't necessarily know if I trust how they're going to do it.
We will see. And next year, that's when everything's going to start. So we'll see how it goes.
But you and I differ on whether or not we think Batman v Superman is going to be good.
I just didn't want to get into that argument.
I could see you trying to push things along, and I was just like, nope, I'm not going to let you.
We've had this argument so much on the podcast. It's like, well, we'll just wait till March and see what happens.
I know exactly what's going to happen. It's going to be bad, and everybody's going to be disappointed.
My problem is
I'm going to say right now, it is going to be bad. People are going to be disappointed with this movie.
You're saying that, and we have an open forum of a podcast where you say that, and so say March comes out and the movie is really good.
Okay.
Like, you're going to make yourself fucking hate it because you won't swallow your words.
No, I will admit that I'm wrong. I feel like I do that. Not on the podcast, but I haven't necessarily been wrong on the podcast yet. But I mean, in my life, I feel like I sometimes will admit when I'm wrong.
See, I don't think you will like it because you don't like Superman, and I don't really like Superman either, but I'm more forgiving of the character than I think you are, and I'm more forgiving of DC as a whole than you are. And so I think that here's what I expect. I think this movie is going to be divided. I think a lot of people are going to love it, and a lot of people are going to dislike it, like people that prefer Marvel.
Sure.
Like you are going to dislike it, and I guarantee in March we're going to have an argument when we review it. I'm
already looking forward to it.
That's my prediction. I don't predict that it's going to be a universally acclaimed movie, but I think that it's going to have a bigger group of people like it than Man of Steel did. And then there's going to be people like you that suck Marvel's dick that are going to just be like, well, I didn't like it because I like Marvel better or whatever. So
we're setting the bar at Man of Steel. That's where we're setting the bar?
No, I'm
saying
so Man of Steel, more people dislike it than like it. With this movie, it's going to have a much larger group of people that like it because it obviously has Batman in it and Batman's universally loved. But then there's going to be people like you that, well, I'd rather go see Civil War or whatever. Like,
okay, whatever.
In April, a real superhero movie is going to come out.
I don't like that voice. I don't feel like that's how I sound.
That's how you sound when you get snobby.
Okay,
no,
whatever.
I'm just kidding. All right, we'll move on to Marvel though, and this is like a
Finally.
this is like this is like a nothing story. Like it's kind of silly to even be talking about it, but Matthew McConaughey turned down the villain role of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. So, like I said, it's like not a not casting, but I thought it was pretty interesting that they approached him for it. He's like one of the big actors that has yet to be in a comic book movie.
Yeah.
And I know that he's gone on record of saying that he'd be open to doing one.
Yeah.
So I guess
if
he's
the
just
right role.
Yeah, I guess Guardians of the Galaxy 2's villain is not the right role.
Yeah.
Which makes me wonder what the villain is going to be.
Yeah, it's curious because we've talked about this in the past where he's kind of becoming one of those actors that you have to, when he chooses a project, you kind of have to, your ears perk up a little bit.
Yeah.
Because of the way he's been choosing projects in the last few years. So for him to turn down a role like this, it makes me a little bit nervous, but then again, the first movie is just so fucking good that I don't know how they could screw it up. My problem is Ronan was such a lackluster villain, but it didn't matter because you loved the character so much that if they came out with another movie, a sequel to that movie, and it had another lackluster villain, then I feel like we're not going to be as forgiving the second time around.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious what part Thanos is going to play in it, if any. I think with him being introduced in the other half of the Marvel Universe imminently, with like the Infinity War movies, I think that at this point you just leave him out of Guardians of the Galaxy.
I think they probably will include him. It's similar to the way that they included him in the first one.
Yeah.
Just a very small role, which will be disappointing because I'm getting tired of them constantly teasing him.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're not going to do Thanos, full on Thanos until Infinity Wars anyways.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's just going to be I feel like him turning this role down just kind of, it makes me believe that it might not be a great villain for the second movie in a row.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, they just started principal photography, believe it or not. So I think the movie comes out in like a year and a half.
Yeah.
So we'll see. All right. I got like one more story and then one more just like a video I saw. I want to know if you saw. So I'll do the story first. This blew my mind when I read this. So I guess Sony is rebooting Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
Yeah.
Did you see this?
Yeah, it's super disappointing because I really liked that first one.
Yeah, I did too. And here's the fucking weird part. They're not like rebooting it and redoing that movie, or they're not doing the sequel to that movie with like a different cast. They're making the fourth book, which is called like The Girl That Did Some Shit with a Spider Web or something. And the guy,
I thought there was only 3 books.
No, this one came out not too long ago, and it was not written by the
Oh
author
yeah,
of the
that's
first
right.
3
That's right. I do remember
because
this,
that person died.
Yep.
What is it? It's called The Girl in the Spider's Web. And I guess it was one of those situations where he might have had notes and somebody.
Yeah, I think he had started it. Yeah, something like that.
So that's just like a really weird situation to me. Like David Fincher's is not returning. Rooney Mara's not returning. Daniel Craig's not returning. They did say that there's a screenwriter attached and that they're eyeing Alicia Vikander, who's in Ex Machina, for the role of Lisbeth. That's
and Man from U.N.C.L.E.
Yeah. She's awesome. So I'm not against her casting. I just think it's really fucking weird.
And it's a bummer because I was really hoping that they would do the second movie with Daniel Craig and that cast, even though Daniel Craig's character is not prominent in the second book. It's weird. Yeah. I've only read one of those books, and it's the second book because I loved that movie so much, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
Yeah.
That it made me want to read the books, but I was being lazy and I've seen the first movie, so I don't necessarily need to read the first book.
Yeah.
So I just started with the second book and I just not read the third one yet.
Yeah, it's like almost.
The second book is really good, man.
Is it? And that's why I really liked that first movie. I think I remember we saw it together and I might have even liked it more than you did. I know I put it pretty high on my top 10 that year, and that was before we were doing podcasts. So,
yeah.
I don't even remember what that top 10 was, but it was pretty high up there.
It doesn't matter because it was pre-podcast.
Exactly. But I was really excited at the prospect of a sequel. And it's disappointing that that group of creative talent's not going to be doing another one.
I knew it was a long shot because they kind of, after that movie, the movie didn't do as well as I think they thought it was going to. So it was kind of a long shot that they were going to make the sequel anyways.
Yeah.
But I kind of was still holding out hope until I saw this story that they, I guess, are planning to reboot it.
Yeah. So we'll keep our eyes on that one. That's a really fucking weird story to me. Like, Sony's a mess.
Oh, yeah,
so
for sure.
That's interesting. All right, last thing. Did you see the video from Fox News? It was like right after the Star Wars trailer was released, and there was a woman from Fox News, and then they basically had a debate between this woman who hates Star Wars and this guy who works at Fox News that loves Star Wars, and the guy moderating the debate was anti-Star Wars as well. It's a really fucking weird video, and if you can find it, you should put it in the show notes, but it was really surreal. It's like Fox News already is kind of like the Satan news channel.
Yeah.
And now they're going after all the things they could go after. They're going after Star Wars.
That seems like a weird thing to take a stand on.
I know. I was hoping you had seen it because it's a really surreal
Is the moderator Matt Hurt from The Obsessive Viewer?
No, it's some other white guy.
No, I haven't seen that video, but I'm interested in seeing it.
Yeah, it made my heart hurt a little bit. It
Yeah.
was like, I've never heard anybody talk about Star Wars like that. Like, not even in the people I've met in real life, like, that have never seen Star Wars. Nobody takes a stand against it, saying that they don't get it. Yeah. And, like, the guy who's arguing for it is kind of, like, not really, he says he loves Star Wars, but he's not really defending his point very well. And he's like, it's like the classic story of good versus evil. And they're like, oh, that's every movie.
Yeah.
Like, they just jump down his throat, and it's really weird. Like, I suggest watching it, but it'll probably piss you off. So
probably.
All right, man. That's all I have for nerd news.
All right, like we've teased earlier in the episode, our main topic, it changes from episode to episode, but we're going to do a Spectre review, the latest James Bond film. So I'll go ahead and start off like we do with every review that we do. I'll start off with a synopsis. It's going to be pretty vague because this is a 2.5-hour movie. So I'd be talking for like 10 minutes straight trying to explain the entire movie. But Spectre is the latest film in the James Bond franchise. It follows Bond as he struggles to maintain his 00 status while trying to complete Mom's last mission. That is like the vaguest thing that you could say about this movie.
I feel like every James Bond movie is him defending his 00 status.
Yeah, but in this one, they actually they weren't allowed, like they weren't a thing for a little bit in this movie. But so broad strokes, Tyler.
So this movie was pretty disappointing. It was a movie that I was very much looking forward to. I'm a big fan of the Daniel Craig Bond movies for sure, and this one seemed like it was going to be the culmination of all those movies with the best of the villains. Like, you have Christoph Waltz, you can't go wrong with that. Like, this crazy organization that's been in Bond lore for forever, Spectre. Like, all of it was going to come together in this film, and it was going to be Daniel Craig's last film as James Bond, most likely, and it was just going to wrap up nicely, and it didn't. Like I said, very disappointing. It was way too long, and it just seemed all over the place. It didn't seem like it had a clear direction and it wanted to go. And I was a little lost, and I just didn't enjoy it as much as I had hoped to.
Yeah, for sure. I think we're going to agree a lot on this movie. For me, Skyfall is fantastic. I think it would have been really hard to follow up that movie to begin with. It had great story. The villain was fantastic. Felt like Bond finally had a worthy adversary in Skyfall. And then the action was just fantastic, especially that third act was just, it gives me a movie boner just thinking about it. And this movie had almost none of that.
For sure.
It was way too long, like you said. It was really fucking boring. Yes. I felt my thinking while I was watching this movie, what's going on, and do I even care? It was just super, super boring.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I really liked the opening scene, kind of like what I talked about when I talked about comics. The opening scene was great. It had a really cool, well done tracking shot. I really appreciated that opening sequence. But after that, it was just a confusing mess.
Oh, for sure.
So, right on to story. What do you feel about the story of this film?
I mean, same as you. I thought that a lot of it, the majority of it, was really boring. And I also thought it was very congested. And this movie did one of the things that I really dislike when I watch a movie, especially a movie that takes place later in a franchise, and that's whenever you retread to the previous movies and say, you remember this person, this event, this event? Well, guess what? It was all connected, and here's how it was connected, and...
They never explain why it's connected.
No,
they just tell you it was connected, but they never... They want it to be this big finale and this big tie, like it ties it all together. It doesn't at all, because they were never meant to tie together.
Exactly. So the gist I got from it was, I guess, that what is Javier Bardem's character's name?
I don't remember.
Anyways, his character, and then Mads Mikkelsen's character from Casino Royale, like you see their photographs throughout the movie, and I guess you see Vesper's photograph. Are they all supposed to be connected to Spectre?
Yeah, they were all part of Spectre.
Okay.
But they never explain. Yes. They never really explain what Spectre is to begin with.
So you're telling me when I go back and watch those movies, they should be wearing silver rings with the octopus on it, right? Because I guarantee they're fucking not.
No, they won't be, because they didn't. These movies were never meant to tie in with each other.
For sure. And that's what I hate. Like, this movie could have set Spectre up as its own organization, and there were no needs to tie it to the other Daniel Craig Bond films. Like, I can see why they would want to, but you didn't need to do that. Christoph Waltz is such a strong actor. You could have put all of the villainous parts of this movie on his shoulders, and he could have carried it. But instead, they used him sparingly, and that hindered the movie, in my opinion.
For sure. And his motivations were so cliche.
Oh, yes.
Super. And
like the big reveals at the end?
Yeah.
Like super lackluster.
Oh, yeah. And there was a particular twist, and I don't know if I necessarily should call it a twist, because they planted it so hard, and it was so lame, too.
Yes.
The fact that what's his name? What do they call him? C? Is it C?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Was part of Spectre, which I'm sorry, spoiler alert, I guess I should have said.
Well, I mean, it's obvious as soon as you meet the character.
Yeah. He just has an evil, like, villainous face. I don't think that guy's ever played a good guy, ever. And they do this thing, and I don't know if it's kind of brief, but when they're voting for that bill or whatever it is that he put forth, South Africa is the only one that votes against him, and then you see a news story that something happened in Cape Town. I was like, all right, well, he's involved. He was pissed that they voted against him. It's just, they planted that reveal so hard that you see it from a mile away.
This is a little off the rails, but the thing about that reveal that upset me was that it was so obvious, and like right before the reveal was about to happen, my wife looks over at me and she goes, "Hey, I bet C's part of Spectre." And then when it happened, she was super fucking proud of herself. Like, all right, I thought that the whole fucking movie. I just didn't say anything because I'm not a dick.
Yeah.
Like, so that was my problem with it, was that she was so proud that she figured it out.
Yeah, that was, and they never, again, just like they didn't really explain how the movies tie in together very well.
Yeah.
They don't really explain how he knows, like, how he's involved.
Yeah, you never see, I don't know, he's not at that meeting that Daniel Craig crashes. Yeah. You never see him and Christoph Waltz even converse, do you?
Yeah, and they kind of tease, like, I don't remember what Bond says to him at a certain point, but he's like, well, so C is like your protege or something like that, and he's like, I guess something like that. And then they never explain anything. It's a 2.5 fucking hour movie, but they don't explain anything.
Exactly.
It's just Bond jumps from scene to scene.
Yes.
But there's very little to tie them together.
Exactly. That is exactly how I felt watching this movie. It was one set piece after another, and I guess you could argue a lot of Bonds are like that, but they're not tied together at all. I feel like they just wanted to be like, well, here we're going to do the snow action piece. Yeah. And here we're going to be in the desert. And there's no really tangible reason why we're jumping from here to here to here. And yeah, they explain, like, well, we have to go here for this, but it just doesn't make a lot of sense. It's not a strong story at all.
No, for sure. Batista's character, completely worthless in this movie.
Yes. I mean, do you want to
He's
go
just a plot device.
I mean, it kind of ties into performances as well a little bit. Like,
Oh, sure. We can go ahead and move on.
I mean, how do you... That guy's not a like the most amazing actor ever, but I think that he proved himself in Guardians of the Galaxy, and then you cast him in Bond and you give him one word.
Yeah, but I think that's a good strategy because he doesn't necessarily talk that much in Guardians of the Galaxy, and what he does say is very kind of basic. And so I think they're doing a good job because he's obviously a menacing force. He's an intimidating guy. So I think they used him correctly. I just didn't like the story and I didn't like the character. But I think he was used the way I think he should be used. I don't think he's a very good actor. And I think he kind of proved that he can do well in a limited role because Drax in the first Guardians is a limited role.
Yeah. And
I don't think he did a bad job in this movie.
I mean,
he wasn't asked to do much.
I didn't expect him to be like the main villain or anything. Like the thing that I was most excited about going into Spectre were the villains. So like Christoph Waltz playing like the mastermind and love him to death as an actor. So I was really excited about that. And then having a character like Oddjob or Jaws that was just this menacing force played by Batista from Guardians of the Galaxy. I was really excited for that. And then it was just everything they did with him was disappointing.
Yeah.
Like the train fight was a little cool, but that's just a little cool for a lot of movie.
Yeah. But at that point, I was kind of almost not necessarily checked out, but I was beginning to be like, okay, whatever. Like I don't care about this movie.
There were a couple parts towards the middle of this movie where I was like not dozing off, but
I was drifting off.
Yeah, my eyes were getting heavy, and I've never had that happen in a Bond movie that I've seen.
How do you feel about Christoph Waltz's performance? Since we're talking about performances,
I mean, he definitely was a highlight of the movie for me. I think that he always does well. I don't think that he went too far out of his range.
Yeah, he was definitely in his comfort zone, for sure.
Like he didn't pull off a performance like in Inglourious Bastards or Django where he's won Oscars for his performance, but he was definitely the highlight for me.
Oh, yeah. I just don't think he was given much to work with.
Oh, fuck no.
The motivations for his character were lame, like I said before. And he's just not used very much in this movie.
You know, a lot less than I thought. He pops up in the beginning, and then he's in most of the third act. But the whole middle of the movie, you don't see him at all.
Yeah.
Like, not even hardly referenced. So,
and I think they thought that the whole him being able to watch everything and him kind of be everywhere was going to be a lot more menacing than it actually played in the movie.
Yeah.
So I think using him sparingly was kind of a device to kind of to really land the scenes that you do see him, but it just didn't work for me.
Oh, for sure. Which was disappointing. You get Christoph Waltz to sign on to a Bond movie, and then you give him such a poor role. It's just crazy to me.
Yeah, I think he did a good job. Obviously, it wasn't his best work, but I think that goes more on the story and the screenplay.
1,000%, yes.
So I know you troll your wife, but how do you feel in general now that we've seen all the Craig Bond movies? How do you think he did as Bond?
It's tough because, like I said, I've only seen the Craig Bond movies, so I don't have a ton to compare it to. But, I mean, I don't know. We've shit a lot on this movie, and there were parts of it I enjoyed. And, I mean, Casino Royale is one of my... I don't want to say favorite movies of all time, but it almost did make my top.
Yeah, it's a fantastic movie.
If I made like a top 30, it would be in my top 30.
Okay.
Skyfall is amazing. I've only seen Quantum of Solace once, and that movie is universally panned. So all in all, I would give him like a B, maybe a B plus.
I think he's a fantastic Bond. But like Christoph Waltz, I don't think that he was given much to work with in this movie.
This movie especially.
Yeah.
I actually have it in my notes. This was the least charismatic he's ever been as Bond.
Yeah. And maybe that has something to do with the fact that it was his last movie, and we've talked about in the past that he's done being James Bond, and maybe he was just kind of phoning it in a little bit. But I've said more than once that I don't like this story and I don't like this screenplay. So sometimes an actor can't really shine if the screenplay or the story is not good. So maybe it's just because he was fantastic in Skyfall. He was fantastic in Casino Royale. I've only seen the other movie once as well, and I was not a fan of it. So
I don't remember being, I didn't like that movie a lot, but I don't remember not liking Daniel Craig in it.
Yeah.
So it was just, I think this was probably, I'd have to watch Quantum of Solace again, but this is probably the worst Daniel Craig performance as Bond, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would definitely have to watch that movie again. But I like I said, I blame most of that on the material that he was given to work with.
Yeah, I agree.
So last thing that I kind of want to talk about is the action sequences. In Bond movies, obviously the action kind of shines. This one, not so much. I mean, pretty much all aspects of this movie I did not like. I thought the action was boring. For a Bond movie, you got to give me more than they gave me in this movie. The opening sequence was fantastic. I love that sequence. But from then on, I mean, the train fight somewhat, that was fun. But there was a scene, and it kind of tells you how I feel about the movie in general. There was a car chase with Batista.
Yeah.
And Bond is driving in this new car, and he's talking on the phone the whole time. How am I supposed to care about a fucking action sequence if the character involved barely cares? Batista, his character in that movie, or in that particular scene, was just a nuisance.
Yes.
And it just I felt like I would rather be playing on my phone right now than watching this. How am I supposed to care about the scene if the characters involved barely cared about it?
Yes, I agree. It took away from what could have been an awesome car chase. I mean, every Bond has a car chase. And you mentioned how much you liked the beginning of the movie, and it wasn't even the best beginning of the Daniel Craig Bond movies.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Casino Royale, you're not gonna overtake Casino Royale for me. That opening sequence is just fantastic. It just starts that movie off in such a great tone.
There was nothing in this movie that was the best of the Daniel Craig Bond movies, in my opinion. The Bond girl wasn't the best. The villain wasn't the best. There's nothing.
I thought the Bond girl was awful.
Yeah, she was very uncharismatic.
Yeah.
I mean, she was easy on the eyes or whatever.
Sure.
They all are, but I look at what Vesper did in the first movie.
Yeah.
And then look at the performance we got from, I don't know what the actress's name is, but look what she had to give to us in Spectre.
Yeah. And one thing that bothered me is she barely knows Bond. And I mean, I guess that's the whole thing, is that he's so charismatic that...
Not in this one, but...
Yeah. She's he's being tortured at one point, and she's like, "Oh, I love you." Bitch, you've known him for like a week.
You hated him 3 days ago.
Yeah, it was bad. I rolled my eyes. I physically rolled my eyes, which is surprising because at that point I was about halfway to going to sleep. But that was bad. I did not like her at all.
I agree. Yeah, she did nothing for the story or for the character.
So that's pretty much all I have. I really did not like this movie.
Yeah, I didn't either. We just spent a lot of time shitting on it, and there were parts where I perked up, and I did enjoy it. And like I said, I really did enjoy Christoph Waltz being in a Bond movie, but all in all, very disappointed.
Yeah, so star rating.
Honestly, I was going to give it a 3, and then the more we talked about it, I think I'm going to take it down to 2.5.
I was going to give it a 2.5, and the more we talked about it, I think I'm going to go with a 2.
So what would you give Quantum of Solace? I know it's hard because
it's been so long since I've seen that movie.
Which one do you like better?
Like I said, I would have to watch it again. I can't honestly say I like one better than the other.
All right, great talk.
Well, I tried to answer your question, but you did what my wife does. You ask the question first, I answer it, and then you just keep asking the question again a different way and expecting a different answer.
All right, cool.
All right, so we cap off each episode by talking about our nerd favorite. It's just a question that changes each week. We just pick a topic and we ask each other what our favorite blank is. So since we've already kind of touched on it, but I thought it would be fun to talk about our favorite Daniel Craig Bond movie. And since it's my week, it's my question, I'm going to go ahead and start. I can guess what Tyler's answer is going to be, but I think Skyfall is the best Daniel Craig movie. It's fantastic. Like I said, when we were talking about our broad strokes of Spectre, I think it has it all. It has a fantastic villain, kind of a worthy adversary for Bond. The story's fantastic. You get a lot of backstory, but not too much for Bond's like childhood, which I liked, which Spectre did not do very well at all. And I mean, I love it. The action's fantastic. The third act is just, oh my God, I love that so much. It just caps off. I wasn't quite sure that movie was going to be able to stick the landing, but once they go to his old cabin or his old house, whatever you want to call it, it's just fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, that movie is great for sure, but I would, obviously, saying I would put it in a top 30, I'm going to go with Casino Royale. I guess it's like you never forget your first, and that was my first Bond movie, and maybe that has something to do with it, but I feel like it was the perfect balance of the James Bond action that we love, and then also James Bond sitting around being suave, and he got to do that a lot during the poker games, and I was a really big fan of those scenes.
That's surprising, because most people don't like that.
Really? I love that part of it, and
I enjoyed it as well. I love watching poker. I mean, I wouldn't want to say I love watching poker, but I enjoy playing it, and I'll watch it occasionally. So I actually really like that about that movie, but I think a lot of people think that slows down the movie.
Yeah, and I agree it slows it down, but I don't think it hinders it. Yeah. I like that it slows down. I really like Mads Mikkelsen in it as well. I thought that he was awesome as a Bond villain. Eva Green plays Vesper, right? And she was phenomenal. She was a great Bond girl as well, and I love how that movie kind of wraps up and doesn't have a happy ending necessarily for Bond. Just amazing. Like you said earlier, the intro is the best of the action pieces that start off Bond movies, at least with the ones we've seen with Daniel Craig. So I got to go Casino Royale. The one thing that I will give Spectre credit for is it made me appreciate Casino Royale even more, and I'm like really itching to watch it, so I will probably be watching that tonight.
All right, cool, man.
All right, this is a little off topic, and I know that we usually just do one nerd favorite. Do you have a favorite of the Daniel Craig Bond songs?
I mean, I love Skyfall, so I would have to pick that one, but that Sam Smith one was not good.
That's what I'm getting at. Yeah. That intro was pretty horrendous for Spectre.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I feel bad because we keep shitting on every aspect of this movie, but yeah, that intro was bad, and I did not like that song. I mean, but I don't really like Sam Smith, so.
Yeah. I mean, I hate to be too much on Casino Royale's dick, but I gotta go with Chris Cornell's Casino Royale song, and I forget what it's called, but that was really good. I like that a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not a huge, what's her name? God damn it,
Adele.
I'm not a huge fan of hers, but I just think honestly, it fit the movie so well.
Quantum of Solace's song wasn't too bad. It was Jack White and Alicia Keys, I think, that did.
Oh, yeah, I do remember that, yeah.
That wasn't too crazy bad, but whatever.
All right. So, as always, you can follow us on Twitter at The Nerds Podcast, like us on Facebook, follow us on Google+, vote for us for our Podcast of the Month at podcastland.com, rate, review, subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, basically any good podcatcher you have, we're on it. Check out the YouTube channel, definitely subscribe there as well. Oh, you can email us at thenerdyourlookingfor@gmail.com, any comments, suggestions, whatever you want. I think that's it.
Cool.
All right, for Patrick Kuhn,
Tyler Hunt,
we are the nerds you're looking for. Take it easy, guys.
See you guys.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Nerds You're Looking For podcast, a weekly nerd culture podcast that discusses the culture through various segments. My name is Patrick. God damn it. Hey guys, it's... I almost started how I start the YouTube videos. Hey, it's Pat from the Nerds You're Looking For pod. That's not how we start the episode. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Nerds You're Looking For podcast, a weekly nerd culture podcast that discusses the culture through various segments.
What the fuck is going on?
Do you want to do the intro?
Yeah, I haven't done it in a while. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Nerds You're Looking For podcast, a bi-weekly nerd culture podcast.
Wait, was it bi-weekly?